Altenberg in Germany and a winter wonderland for the second week of the BMW IBSF Bobsleigh and Skeleton World Championships. First action on Thursday morning, the start of the Women's Skeleton Worlds. After a shocker of a first heat that left her only 11th, 64 hundredths off the lead, reigning world champion, earned on this track a year ago, Tina Hermann, blasted down a stunning second effort, cleaned up all of what she described as a catastrophe from the first heat, and 3/10 quicker than anybody had been so far. Hermann still led as we got to the tie for 5th position. Alina Tararichenkova in her first ever World Championships, 22 hundredths up at the midway point, but she slipped back behind Hermann, the German driver's greatest speed at the line, pushing the young athlete from the Bobsleigh Federation of Russia into second. America's Katie Uhlaender lay in 4th place after the first heat. She raced to the silver medal on this track, not last year, but in 2008, and she was the 2012 world champion. She is still a formidable force, and although she too lost time to Tina Hermann, she finds herself in 4th place overnight. Hermann still led as we came to the top two. Teammate Jacqueline Lurling had been 7 hundredths off the lead in the first heat with a great classic Jacker slide. And the girl from Winterberg, the 2017 world champion and team world champion, was the first to put Tina back behind her. The final sled on ice in the second heat was the first round leader. A fast start in the second heat again for Russian Elena Nikitina, but the Bobsleigh Federation of Russia athlete couldn't hold her advantage all the way to the line, slipping into second overnight. That leaves us with the top three covered by 24 hundredths of a second, with Uhlaender and Tararichenkova leading the chase, but it's Jacqueline Lurling, the overnight leader. Thursday afternoon, and the conditions were still tricky as the Men's World Championships got underway. Junior World Champion Yevgeny Rokoshev's start draw number 24, late in the field of 32 athletes, had proved that the track was really holding speed as he speared to a top 7 run. In the second heat, he was even more impressive, leaving Olympic bronze medal winning teammate Nikita Cheshikov trailing in his wake. Rokoshev was still the leader as we got to the fastest 4 sliders in the first heat. Alexander Gassner, a bronze medalist in the World Championships in Altenberg a year earlier, couldn't quite hang on to the Russians' coattails, and he would slip 1 spot to lie in 5th overnight. The top 3 included the reigning world champion. Christopher Groothair's only World Cup win was in Altenberg, and his only World Championship win here as well last year. Could he do it again on the track that clearly favours him? Well, he managed to hold off Rokoshev and opened up a margin that might give him a shot at another gold. Standing between him and the top step, though, teammate Felix Kaisinger. Double junior world champion in 2019 and 2020, Kaisinger was just 7 hundredths off the lead in the first heat and kept his advantage alive by 2 hundredths over his teammate. The final slider into the overnight pause was Alexander Cheshikov. The 2013 world champion was the fastest man in the first heat, and despite a couple of errors creeping in, just managed to hang on to his advantage at the line, but it is a very tight leading group. The race starts tomorrow, says Cheshikov. 600s cover the top 3. The race for the medals is wide open. Friday morning, the women's competition in skeleton concludes with heats 3 and 4. In the 4th and final heat, there was a tie in the top 5. Sophia Griebel of Germany in her 5th World Championships. She finished 6th on this track a year earlier, and she was battling with Russian rookie Alina Tararichenkova. A good strong start and a great run from Griebel gave her a chance to move up. The 20-year-old rookie from the Bobsleigh Federation of Russia has a great start, and she was able to just creep ahead of Sophia Griebel, but the gap remained tiny all the way down the track, and at the line it was nothing. They were tied again. The two still led as we got to the top three with Alina Tararichenkova of Russia. She'd led after the first heat, was second overnight, slipped to third in the third heat. Could she hang on? The gap wasn't big, but it was just enough to guarantee herself at least a bronze medal. But the battle for gold was a two-horse race, incredibly including Tina Hermann, who was only 11th fastest in the first heat. Somehow she rallied, put in two more smoking runs, and a fantastic fourth and final trip down the tricky Altenberg track would give her a great shot at defending her championship. But Jacqueline Lurling had a 1700th of a second advantage, and she had been as quick as Hermann, give or take a 100th in the third heat. She needed another perfect run, but it didn't come. Tiny errors crept in early on, and the gap grew. She'd be the silver medalist, but unbelievably, from 11th place, Tina Hermann retained the title. Hermann winning by 1100s, guaranteeing herself a historic fourth Women's Skeleton World Championship title. Friday afternoon, the final runs of the men's skeleton in mixed conditions. Germany's Alexander Gassner lying in 5th position after 3 of 4 heats. Last year's bronze medalist more than a second off the lead, but with a slender chance of a podium finish, and a phenomenal final run put him right in the mix. 4th place going into the final heat, the junior world champion Yevgeny Rukoshrev, the 21-year-old, was the 13th place finisher a year earlier, looking for a top 6 run. He was 3200ths away from the medals after 3 heats, but he couldn't match Gassner's pace and dropped into second. 23-year-old Felix Kaisinger had been in silver medal position overnight, slipped away from Alexander Cheshikov in Heat 3. He'd gone from 700ths off the lead to 6/10ths back. An early advantage over Gassner evaporated. He too couldn't hold Gassner back. Gassner was guaranteed at least a bronze medal once more. The final 2 sleds, Alexander Cheshikov, the overnight leader, and the man who had overhauled him in Heat 3, the reigning champion. Cheshikov made mistakes early in the run, and they would haunt him all the way down. He had enough to beat Gassner, but was it enough for gold? His body language said perhaps it might not be. A small smile as all the emotion you get from Christopher Grothair. He had one at the beginning of his final run. He'd come from 3rd in the first heat to lead into the final run, and a great drive to victory saw him become only the 3rd man in 30 years to defend a world championship, the first German winner in 20, and the first German double world champion in the men's sport. An astonishing end to a difficult season for Christopher Grothair. For the second time in a World Championships, it's the skeleton mixed team event that kicks off on Saturday. Bobsleigh Federation of Russia Team 2 started off with Alina Tararichenkova, the 20-year-old who finished in 4th in her Worlds, setting a good pace to put them ahead of Canada's Elizabeth Meyer and Kyle Murray. Yevgeny Rukoshrev, the junior world champion, 21-year-old, finished in 5th place in his competition, and they had the lead of the race. BFR2 was still in the lead as we got to Laura Dees, the Olympic bronze medalist from 2018, with Matt Weston. Laura finished in 11th place in the previous year's race, but a good run brought them into contention. And Matt Weston, who had crashed out from 6th position to 23rd in Heat 3 of his World Championships, 4th place last year with Maddie Smith, the British athlete had plenty to prove here, and he did so. 2300ths the lead for Team GB. There were still 4 tough crews to come though, including bronze medalist Alina Tararichenkova with her teammate silver medalist Alexander Chechikov. The fastest starter in the women's field laid down another good run. Enough to put them ahead on 1/2 ahead of Laura Dees. So it was down to Cheshikov, but the 35-year-old veteran of now 3 World Championships here in Altenberg had plenty to say about it. This duo finished only 12th in a field of 15 a year earlier, but they would team up to take the lead with 3 more squads to come. Austria's Janine Flock and Florian Auer had fallen by the wayside as we got to our final 2 teams. The first of which from Germany comprised 2 double world champions here in Altenberg. Tina Hermann defended her gold medal in the women's competition to claim her 4th world championship in total. Well, Christopher Groothair, she had finished 5th a year earlier in the team's competition, but she found 1 more run. Groothair said his legs were dead before the competition, but he still had enough to get close to Chettikov at the start and just creep in front at the finish. 1500ths of a second the advantage with 1 team to go, their teammates from Germany. So for Jacqueline Lurling, the silver medalist behind Tina Hermann, and Alexander Gassner, the bronze medalist, last year's champions in the team contest here in Altenberg, with a final sled to go. She only matched Hermann for pace once in 4 heats in the women's competition, and Jacka couldn't quite hang on to her teammate in this one either. So it was all down to Alexander Gassner. He had driven himself into a 2nd consecutive bronze medal on the track in the men's race, but would have to thrash his teammate Christopher Groothair, the world champion, by 1/4 of a second. He couldn't match that, and Christopher Groothair and Tina Hermann claimed their first mixed team skeleton gold ahead of Jacqueline Lurling and Alexander Gassner, with the BFR team of Nikitina and Chettikov in the bronze medal position. But it's 2 gold medals in 24 hours for Hermann and Groothair. Bobsleigh time for the first time ever in a World Championships. It's the women's monobob. Germany's Mariama Yamanka lay in a strong 5th position after the first of the 4 heats. After a top 10 start, she'd had a good drive in the first run and needed to find consistency that has eluded her so far in the monobobs with the second. She managed to achieve a good second run, and that would stand her in good stead. Kelly Humphries, the world champion for the 4th time a week earlier in women's 2-seat sleds, now in her 3rd ever monobob race. She's won the 2 previous ones held on World Cup weekends, but skids in the second heat were not enough to rob her of the speed she needed to leave Yamanka trailing in her wake. Humphries had been 3900ths off the lead in 4th. Kim Kilicki lay 3rd, 2400ths of a second off the lead. The 10th fastest starter in the field, and she was looking good early on, but long skids down into the Kreisel cost her speed she would never recover, and she slipped a couple of positions. Humphries still led then with the fastest 2 sleds to come. Stephanie Schneider, the very first sled on ice in this competition, was just 700ths off the lead after the first heat. She too had a pretty good looking run, but the exit of corner 9 cost her, and then 14 to 15 also proved expensive. She would stay just 400ths ahead of Humphries, not 3/10. Lauren Alter had grabbed the lead in the late stages of the first heat, the 18th of 23 starters. But the bronze medalist a week earlier couldn't hold it together. Mistakes out of 9 again costing her pace lower down the track, and she would slip 2 spots behind Schneider, the overnight leader, and Humphries, who'd moved into contention in 2nd. The top 3 covered by 1800ths. The medals could come from anywhere in the top 6. And the 4-man competition gets underway in icy weather. This is one of the toughest tracks on the planet. Seaman Friedley knows that well from his career here as a brakeman, and the tiniest of errors can be punished. Crashing off corner 15, 100-yard slide across the finish line. The crew were out and okay, have completed the run, but they have lost valuable time. Into the lead group in 6th position after the first of 4 heats, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. Oskars Klibermanis, the Latvian, starting strongly in 5:13. Better ice in the second heat than he had right at the end of the field for his first, and he laid down a storming run, the first sled in the second heat to improve on his time. And that put down a challenge to Justin Cripps. The Canadian had been in 4th place after the first heat, but dropped back halfway down, and a big skid towards the end of the run further compounded his misery. Instead of moving up to challenge for the medals, he slipped a spot. In 3rd after the first heat, Johannes Lochner, last year's silver medalist, and the only man to beat Francesco Friedrich in any race this year. He won 1 of the 12 two-man encounters, but Friedrich has been untouchable in 4-man. For Lochner, though, the challenge was to stay in the medal hunt, and he did, but not by much. Everybody was struggling to match their first heat performance, and that went equally for the man who lay in 2nd after the first run, Benny Meyer of Austria. He managed to hang on in front of Johannes Lochner, but again, the gap that had been sizable was down to very little at the line. He had slipped away from the potential overnight leader. And that man was the world and Olympic 2- and 4-man champion Francesco Friedrich. Despite mistakes in both starts where they were chasing the start record, Friedrich laid down another convincing demonstration. A few small errors on the Altenberg track, but not even he can be perfect here, and he leads by 38 hundredths overnight, having pulled out a 3/10 advantage over Benny Meyer. Hansi Lochner lies 3rd, but the battle for the medals is well alight. Sunday morning and beautiful sunshine for the final day of racing in the women's monobob. And the conditions were even quicker than the previous day. Alana Myers-Taylor crashed on day 1 out of quarter 9, got back and continued racing. And she crashed in heat 3 as well, but still completed all 4 runs. In the battle for the medals, the top 5 featured a rookie. World Championship debutante as a driver, Cynthia Appia, with a series of scintillating starts. She's got lots of experience driving monobobs over the last couple of years and proved that she may be a real contender in the 2022 Games. Olympic champion Mariama Yamanka has failed to gel with the monobob races so far this season, but here in Altenberg, when it really counted, she finally found her touch. She dropped behind Appia, though, early in the run, but found speed at the bottom just to sneak back in front for a top 4 finish. Showing how hard the sleds are to keep in a straight line, Stephanie Schneider, the overnight leader, had dropped to 3rd place after her 3rd run down the icy Altenberg track. But again, she found control in heat 4. For most of the run, enough to put her ahead of Yamanka and guarantee herself a medal. Lara Nolter had been the leader after the first heat, dropped to the bottom of the top 3 overnight and fought back to 2nd, just 7 hundredths off Kaylee Humphries after 3 heats. But the 4th got away from her just when she needed it most, and she dropped behind Schneider with 1 sled to go. She was 2nd. The final sled, Kaylee Humphries, 4th after the first run, and then the fastest 2nd and 3rd heats. She saved her best till last, the fastest start of her competition, and a brand new track record to become the first ever women's monobob world champion, a week after claiming a historic 4th women's bobsleigh world title. Kaylee Humphries, 2 gold medals in 2 weeks, the first time that's ever been possible for a female slider, and she claimed them both. The last heats of the 4-man competition, the blue ribbon event in perfect weather. Justin Cripps was forced to pull out of the 2020 World Championships in Altenberg with injury. 2021, though, despite it being a short season, was a better one for the Worlds. The Canadian coming down in 5th position at the end of the 3rd heat, and he held on with a nice 4th run to seal that top 5 finish.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Love you guys.
Ahead of him was Latvia's Oskars Kibermanis. Just 900ths was the margin over the Canadian. They needed a big start, which they got, and a good, clean run on this track that is so tricky to be good on. But it was good enough for Kibermanis, and he doubled his advantage to the line to take a 4th place finish. In the top 3 right from the beginning of the competition was Johannes Lochner, 3rd fastest in the 1st heat and the 2nd and the 3rd. He was 3rd fastest in the 4th heat as well. Last year's silver medalist treating himself to a Valentine's gift of a bronze medal in the 4-man. It was a big day for Austria's Benny Meyer. 2nd fastest right from the beginning of the competition. He was in the silver medal position overnight, and he did not waver. The only man to give chase to Francesco Friedrich, 2nd quickest in 2 of his heats, and doing enough to claim Austria's 1st silver medal in almost his lifetime. But it was Francesco Friedrich who was head and shoulders above the rest as the favourite. He missed out on the start record and in the 3rd heat by a couple of hundredths on the track record, but he still claimed his 4th consecutive 4-man gold medal in the World Championships to add to his 7 2-man and 2 teams medals. One of the greatest ever bobsledders does it again on home ice. A fantastic finale to 2 weeks of great racing in Altenberg. Testament to the work of the teams, the athletes, the organisers, officials and support crews for making the World Championships happen in this craziest of all seasons.